me is that I'm a massive spreadsheet nerd. Um, in a previous life, I used to like build dashboards in Excel, and basically do data analytics as a full-time job. So I have done some like quite advanced stuff, including like VBA. I don't know if anybody's like into yeah, coding or anything. But I used to do a lot of training in a previous job to just help people understand the basics because I did a degree in maths and I had to teach myself spreadsheets when I started out my career. Nobody ever taught me how to do them. And I remember this time where I was in my first job, and because I had a degree in maths, people just assumed that I'd know what I was doing. And I got sent this like massive file of data, and it was like, oh, can you just do something with this and like put it in pivot tables and like just clean it up and stuff. And I was like, what like I haven't got the foggy, like honestly I was about to quit my job because I was like, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. But I put my big girl pants on and I figured out how to get really good at spreadsheets. So this presentation, and this practical exercise that we're going to do today is like if you have felt like that in the past, or if you somebody dump some like a massive spreadsheet on you and like do something with this. The aim of this is that that doesn't feel so intimidating because at least you have the basic skills in place to be able to deal with that. And honestly, I'm telling you, spreadsheets aren't that bad. So, what I would love, just maybe a couple of moments today. Oh, by the way, also in another life, I used to be a maths teacher. So, this is why I'm like really geeking out about this sort of stuff. Like, I'm a failed maths teacher. So, this is me like trying to relive my days of maths teaching. Um, I would love if we had a couple of moments where you felt like your mind was blown. Hopefully, that was how you will feel at some point during this session. So, the first thing that I have done is dropped in the chat a Google Sheet. So, it's this sheet here. Um, it's view only. So, what I would like you to do is download it. You can either work on your own Google Sheet, or if you do have Excel on your laptop, I'm going to work from Excel just because everything that I've done in this presentation is based on using this in Excel. Google Sheets is basically the same thing. It's just that finding the tools to deliver the same thing is slightly nuanced, but it works in the same way. You just got it's like things are labeled slightly different. All of the core functionality is exactly the same. The formula structure that we'll work through is exactly the same. So it is up to you. But if you do have Excel and you want to work along with me, please really encourage you to do so, because the best way to get good at spreadsheets is being practical and hands-on and giving it a go. If you don't, if you're joining from your phone, or like you're like, I just want to listen along, that's totally fine too. But to get the most out of it, I would really encourage you to follow me as I'm working through some different scenarios. So, oh, and the other thing that I was going to say, if anybody ever, this was built for specifically for um, being able to crunch data in the media and advertising world, which is what I used to do. So some of these scenarios will be specific to media and advertising. If you are ever applying for a job through Pollen in that industry, you will probably come across a skills challenge that's very similar to some of the stuff that we're doing today. So whether you're applying for the current job that we have, which is there's a lot of parallels, this is going to help. Sorry, I don't have the Google. Let me send it again. So it's this link here. So just follow that link and you should be able to download it. I'm also going to attach it as an Excel let me just close this. I'm going to attach it as a file as well, if in case anybody has any problems. So it's also as a file in the chat. Cool. Um, um, so this is a cheat sheet to begin with, and I'm also we can share this with you. In fact, I can probably share the link in case you. I'm going to share the presentation link with you so you can all take it home afterwards, but you don't need to do anything with that right now. So this is a cheat sheet of things that you're probably, if you are in that world, you're going to come across these things all the time. But these basic things are relevant in any aspect of business. So whether you are working in sales or marketing or a commercial role or finance, you're probably going to come across these sorts of calculations in most jobs. So the skills that I'm trying to help you with here are transferable across lots of different places. So one of these metrics is called a cost per thousand or a CPM. This is very common in advertising. If you are, whenever you're dealing with pricing of advertising space, it is often priced on a cost per thousand. And by cost per thousand, we might mean cost per thousand eyeballs that are going to see your advert. That is the most common way in which things are priced. And the way that you calculate that is the cost divided by the volume, i.e., the amount of impressions or the amount of viewers or whatever volume represents times 1,000. The next metric we're going to be working with is called a CPA. CPA is a general term for cost per acquisition. And again, this is relevant for lots of different things. It could be calculated as the cost divided by the amount of responses that you get, the amount of sales that you get in the charity world, the amount of donations that you get. If I was trying to acquire a customer right now for Pollen and I was doing paid advertising, if I spent £5,000 and got one customer, the cost for acquiring that customer would simply be £5,000 divided by one, which is £5,000. The key is with this metric, the lower the better. You want to pay as little as possible to acquire customers. The next thing is response rate or click-through rate. Again, very common terminology in the advertising world. This is calculated as the amount of responses divided by the amount of people that saw your advert, or the amount of clicks that you had divided by the amount of impressions. Again, how many people were exposed to your advert. So this is calculated shown as a percentage rather than a monetary amount. It's effectively saying what percentage of people actually did something as a consequence of seeing your advert or the exposure of your company. With this, the higher the better. We're used to dealing with very small percentages in this particular metric, but high is a good thing because it means that your advert is extremely engaging and people are clicking on it or they're responding and taking an action as a consequence of being exposed to it. Percentage change is often you might be asked to think about what percentage change has happened if you've got a dashboard of data or something and you're saying, well, month on month, how much revenue have we increased, or how much has our CPA come down or gone up month on month? Or equally, if we're comparing two different variables, so we might be comparing the same period year on year, what is the variance between those things? And the way that we calculate that is the new figure minus the old figure divided by the old figure. Or if you're working in Excel, it's just new divided by old minus one. Conversion rate is calculated as the amount of conversions divided by the amount of responses. So this is relevant for like website tracking, for example. A response might be somebody that landed on your website, a visitor on your website, and the amount of conversions would be the amount of people that inquired or the amount of people that went on to buy the product. So again, we're calculating this as a conversion as a percentage, and it's relevant in lots of different settings because if you're doing paid advertising or you're getting people through the door and they're clicking on your advert and it's you've got a really low cost per click and you've done all the right things to get people to land on your website, if there's something that blocks them from converting, i.e., your website journey is confusing or like your website is broken or something, then the whole advertising campaign is sort of pointless. So that's kind of that, and actually, a lot of advertisers spend put a lot of investment into really optimizing their website journey because they want to push through people through to a sale. They don't want to lose that sale. So again, with that, the higher the better. Average order value is a or AOV. Could in the charity world it could be average donation value, average sales value, various different ways of talking about it. It's basically how much money you made divided by the amount of sales that you made, revenue divided by conversions. It's basically the average amount for each sale. Again, usually you'd hope the higher the better because it helps businesses to make more money or charities to increase their donation income. And return on investment, ROI, you'll see this everywhere in any sort of commercial organization, even in charities. It's a calculation where you're figuring out how much money you made divided by how much money you spent. So it's typically reported still in monetary terms. So if I spent £100 on advertising and I made £100 in sales, then my ROI would be £1. And that basically means I've broken even. That's fine. I've not lost anything under a pound. I've lost money. Anything over a pound, I've made a profit. So let's dig into some actual Excel stuff. What you will find in this Excel sheet, if you start off by looking on this tab called Basics, we're going to run through just some really basic things to tidy up data and make it look a little bit more presentable. With some just really basic steps, we can help make it more visually appealing and improve the way that our data looks. So the first thing that let me just see if I can split screen this. Yay. Can you still see the whole thing, Holly? Yeah, I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
So changing column width, for example, really easy. All you need to do is hover over here and you can make sure that you see all of the cells properly. Inserting rows and columns, also really easy to do. So just right click, you hover over the row that you want to insert something, right click, insert, and that will pop. It will also always default to a row being inserted above. Likewise with columns, just hover over here, right click, insert, and you can add columns and rows however you like. You can also, if you want to make this into a nice looking table or something, you can remove the grid lines. So you go page layouts, remove the grid lines. You can add some formatting here to make it look like a little table by selecting all of your data here and adding a grid. Sorry, I've not got the full thing. Let's just do this. View. Sorry, I am winging this a little bit, just to be honest. Oh, here we go. You can add some grid lines. You can add borders here. Don't need that bottom border, so I'm just going to delete that. And then we want to format this to be in monetary terms. So on the number section on home, we can hover over here and make that into currency. I don't want all of those decimal points because they're quite big numbers we're dealing with. So I'm going to decrease the decimal by clicking this button here. We can add some commas to make this a bit easier to read by pressing this button here. Again, I don't want the 2 decimal places, so I'm going to move that back. We can also make it quicker to make the format the same. So by using the format paint tool. So for example, I want the clicks column to be the same as look the same as impressions. So I'm going to hover over here, click format paint, and then format paint this over here, and you'll see it looks the same. Revenue, I want to be the same as cost, so I'm going to format that and then click revenue. And now what I'm going to do is work through this, and feel free to do this with me at the same time on your own spreadsheet. So I'm going to go back to the cheat sheet and I'm going to fill in all of these blank cells. So the first thing that I'm going to do is work out the cost per thousand, which starts off with equals, open brackets, cost divided by impressions, star 1,000. Hit enter. Oh, there we go. This is also currency. So I'm gonna, and you can just drag that down. So I don't need to retype the same formula over and over again. So I've got my cost per thousand here. This is my click-through rate. Let me just widen this so I can see. So if you look back onto the cheat sheet, you'll be able to see that the CPA is click-through rate is clicks divided by impressions. So we do equals clicks divided by impressions, and we're going to make that a percentage. This is a low number. For a click-through rate, you would expect it to be under 1%. So I'm just going to drag that down here. Conversion rate is my conversions divided by my clicks, how many people went on to buy. Again, I'm going to make that a percentage. We'll drag that down. Average order value is my revenue divided by my conversions. That's already in the right format. So there we go. And then my ROI is revenue divided by cost. So change this to currency. Now, the one thing we don't have on here is CPA. So I'm going to add that into my report. And then I can just format paint this to look the same. So for my CPA, I've got equals cost divided by conversions. And there we go. Now, if we want to add in our totals for this table, what we need to do is equals sum, open brackets, and then select the data that you want to sum, enter. And then I'm going to drag this here, but be mindful, this is a formula. So we want to drag that down for total. So I'm going to drag this, just going to do my total for conversions. Bear in mind, a shortcut is just to hit Control V. So where you can copy and paste, it's Control C, Control V, Control V. But what I do want is the same format as this row here. So I'm going to go Format Paint again. And there we go. So I can drag down this formula, this one, and then these ones. And then average is the same. So instead of sum, you're going equals average, open brackets, there. And then here, 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 here. Again, we need to be mindful not to just take an average. The true calculation is still your average impressions divided by your your average cost divided by your average impressions, rather than just generically taking an average of your cost per thousand. And then we go, and then I'm going to format paint again. And then maybe I'm going to change this to bold so that I can see the total. And maybe I'm going to change this to italics just for reporting purposes so that I can see how that. So this is looking pretty good. I'm happy with this. I'm going to move this back a bit just to make it a bit more presentable. And the other thing that I want to show you on formatting, if you're building any kind of data tables like this, a nice little feature is conditional formatting. So what we can do is add a traffic light system or color shading according to what is good and bad. And that like it's not good and bad as in like, oh, we've done a bad job. It's more to help us identify where trends lie, how we can optimize moving forwards, and make recommendations for how we improve performance in the future. So I am going to create a new rule, and I'm going to go an icon set and do adopt a traffic light system. So in this case, CPA, we want a low number. The lower, the better. Um, so in this case, I need to reverse the icon set because what it assumes here is that green, that the higher number is green, the medium number is amber, and the low number is red. Whereas actually, we want the lowest number is a green is green in our case. So I'm going to reverse icon order. And then my target for this campaign is under £100. So I want to and it's based on the number. So my target CPA for this campaign is £100. Anything over between £100 and £200 is sort of tolerable. It's not ideal, but that's ideally it'd be under 100. So I've added that variance, that icon set there. Click OK. And then you'll be able to see that we've got a little traffic light system. So we can easily pick out, right, what months were performing well for me? Well, March and April. What happened in March and April? Why were they so good? That's some automatically I can see that there's some things that I might want to dig into. January and March were atrocious, January especially. So we might want to delve into that. And then we had another period here that wasn't so good. So it's definitely already given me an easy way to figure out there's something not quite right here. The stuff that's good, let's dig into it. Um, cool. So is everyone with me? I've not got anybody asking like, whoa, this is mental. I have no idea what you're doing. Hopefully this is all still okay. I'm going to take the silence as thank you for a thumbs up. Cool. A little top tip, when you're presenting data, we don't have it here, but sometimes you can end up with these div errors in data. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have gone wrong. Sometimes it just means that it's a calculation error, and where you've got zero. So let me show you here. If you're dividing something, for anybody that goes back can remember back to their GCSE maths, dividing something by zero is not a viable thing. You can't do that. It's inevitably division only works with integers, and zero is just, well, zero. So you're always going to have an error. You can quickly figure this out in Excel. Like if I have an aversions to these, if I'm presenting data to clients, doesn't look pretty to have an error because if you're giving this data to somebody that also doesn't really understand data, they're going to be like, oh, is there a mistake there? What's going on? You can quickly fix this by using an if error function. So in this instance, there might have been zero impressions, could have been real, and it's affected your reporting. You can fix this by using the if error function. So instead of just doing the generic divide one by the other, you keep the formula the same, but you're inputting if error, open brackets, clicks divided by impressions, value if error. So that value, so this first field is saying, if there's no error, what do you want me to calculate? And this field is saying, if there is an error, what do you want me to input? So in this case, I'm just going to put 0. And then we can copy that down across all of our formulas in case it happens again. So top tip in case you ever come across that sort of thing. Cool. And then we've done most of this. Okay, let's move on to some filtering and ranking because I'm sure you're all very keen to get into VLOOKUPs, but we need to get our basics right. Filtering and ranking. This is super easy, but sometimes you might have more data than this, and it's not as easy to pick out the best things from the worst things, or you might want to order things in a different way, and especially if you've got a big dump of data, filtering and ranking is often the quickest way to get the extract the information that you need. So all you need to do is hover over the top row where all of your column headers are, and we go sort and filter, filter, and we add on our little filters, and then we can sort A to Z. Note that if you've got totals or averages, that would also be incorporated into the filter, so just be mindful of that. I'm going to go back. You could mitigate from this by not having this in the, actually, I don't know if this will work in. Yeah, there you go. You can mitigate this by making sure you've always got a row. If you have a blank row in between a table and other information, the filtering won't work, won't apply to anything below that blank row. It will only go up to where there is still data available in that final row. You can also custom sort according to all different types, multiple different layers. So using the custom sort tool, you could sort the first layer by, for example, column B, which is month. So we might want to make this a custom list. So my first layer might be on, oh, actually, this won't really apply. Let's say we want to first off rank it by CPA, smallest to largest, and then we might want to add a level and make sure that the second layer is ranked by something else. This is more applicable to where you've got more data labels and more information to deal with. Oh, so I need to add month here. So custom sorts, and we're going to do this on CPA smallest to largest, and then we go, we can see what was the best performing month all the way down to the worst performing month. Cool. VLOOKUP. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard that word, especially if you're like applying for a job and it's a, you must be familiar with, I feel like the two things that always come up are must be familiar with VLOOKUPs and pivot tables. So we're going to do both of those things. Um, so a VLOOKUP is a really helpful tool to quickly identify matching information. And the most common way that you would use a VLOOKUP is if you had a base layer of data in one sheet or somewhere else, and you wanted to feed in that information into another sheet. So I'm going to just give you a little explanation as to how a scenario where this might show up. So if you look on this tab here, VLOOKUP 2, this is a really simple version, but for the sake of time, I'm going to jump straight to the next one. You can always use this as an exam as a test later. So let's say I've got this table and I've got in this data dump, I've got cost, impressions, clicks, and conversions. Now, my boss has asked me to create create a table where I can review this data by month. Now, I only have week. This is for each week. This is of when a campaign was live, but I need to link this to a month. So there are ways there's formulas that can do that, but I'm just going to show you how to do it in the context of using a VLOOKUP. So over here, I've got a table where I can match that date or week to a particular month. And what I'm going to use a VLOOKUP for is to match this week cell here to the associated month rather than manually typing. Because if this had thousands of rows of data, you'd be spending a long time manually typing out what month each row related to. VLOOKUP helps us to do that really quickly. So what I'm going to do is type in month. And how we do this is, okay, so we go equals VLOOKUP. Lookup value is the first step that we need to take. So what this means is, what's your starting point? What data are you going to give me to feed off? What do you want? What am I matching against? Like, what's the starting point? So in this case, my lookup value is this date here. That's what I want to link back to. The next bit of this formula is the table array. So it's asking, what table are you using to match to that particular cell? So in this case, I'm selecting this table here in month. So I'm going to hover across, I'm going to click A and drag this across to B. So in this case, I've got my dates here and my month here. So that is my the column that I'm going to read off. You can see here that it says month exclamation mark. What that is saying is it's linking to this tab here. That's fine, that's good. If you were to remove that, it would be reading off of columns A and B in this tab here. So we're just linking it to a different sheet. That's all good. So I'm going to click comma, column index number. So what it's saying is, okay, for this new information that you want me to input into this table, what column do you want me to read off from your looked up table? In this instance, we want column 2 because we want to read off month. And then range lookup, we're either saying, do you want an approximate match or an exact match? In most instances, you're going to be looking for an exact match. So we just write false. Close brackets, enter. And there you can see that we've pulled through January. I don't need to do anything else. I can drag this all the way down or double click if you're using Excel. Double click here and it will feed it down all the way into the rest of the table. Now, a little bit of a watch out with VLOOKUPs are really good, and hopefully a couple of you have been like, whoa, that's cool, if you don't ever have no familiarity with how to do this. There is a problem with VLOOKUPs. Be warned. VLOOKUPs are not dynamic. What that means is if I do anything, if I start tampering with this table here, the information that I've given it here is totally fixed, i.e., it's still going to assume that this is the table that we're looking up from, and it will always be column 2. If I decide, oh well, I'm going to add some more, I want to add quarters in, or some or years or other things into this table because I'd like to make this dashboard a bit more advanced. If I insert a column here, my lookup's destroyed because it's still reading off of column 2, but column 2 has disappeared. So if you're not going to face that eventuality, VLOOKUP's still a solid formula to use, but there is a workaround that is dynamic, and it's called an index match. It does exactly the same thing, but if I start messing around with these columns, no problem. It will move with the columns. So I can write the same formula of index match is so if I go index, again, I'm just winging this a little bit. Array is index is this one, I think. Watch this go wrong. Match, yes. And then we're going to go match from here. I'll run through this in a second. Yes, that's worked. Okay. So what we've done here instead is index. The first thing that you're looking for is what information do you want? What column do I need to source the information from? It's sort of the reverse of a VLOOKUP in that you're giving it the information that it wants to know like your output first. So my output in this instance that I want is my month. And then we're going to do match. So we type in match and we go look up value. So what information do you want me to look up from? In this case, it's the date there. What information do you want me to match from? And in this instance, it's this whole column here. And what match type would you like? Exact match again. So we press 0. Close brackets, and it's worked. So I drag down that formula, and then what happens is if I want to tamper with this sheet here, it's dynamic. So it will move with however I move this because it's isolated to that particular column. So that is your VLOOKUP. Hopefully a few of you tried it and it feels okay. I'm going to come back to this one later because I would like to move on to pivot tables. Pivot tables are also really straightforward to use, a great way to quickly summarize data. Again, it does have its pitfalls, but generally speaking, if you've got a dump of data, you need to analyze it quickly, you need to summarize it. Definitely the best way to go about that is a pivot table. So we'll use that with this VLOOKUP data here. So what I want to do, again, my boss has asked me, Sophie, I just want to see monthly performance. I just want to see what this campaign is doing, and I also want to see how my CPA is tracking every month. So what I'm going to do to produce that report quickly is I'm going to select all of this data. Quick way to do that is Control Shift right button, so the right arrow, and then the down button, and then we can quickly collect all of the data that's in that VLOOKUP. Again, if you had thousands of rows of data, it's really helpful to use that little sneaky tip, Control Shift right, and then down whilst you're holding Control Shift. And then I'm going to go Insert, Pivot Table. Oh, sorry, another thing to show you is you don't necessarily have to do that. To select all the data, you can also just click this button here and it will do the same thing. So Insert, Pivot Table. So it's already established where that data actually stops. So it already knows that it's going to stop at column F. And I'm going to do that into it's saying, where do you want that pivot table to be placed? I'm going to put it in a new worksheet. So click OK. And then it'll automatically create a new worksheet for me and a blank pivot table. This is the point where people get a little bit overwhelmed, but it's actually fine. So I'm going to show you how to build a little pivot table here. The thing that I want to summarize is monthly data. So my row is going to be month. For building out a simple table, it's often best to just the variable, i.e. the metric that you're reporting against, in this case, month, but it could be anything. Could be year, it could be if you were advertising different formats, different creatives, or anything else. Usually you're going to pop that variable into month. And then we're going to move the data itself into values. So I'm going to do cost, impressions, clicks, and conversions. Now, something to be really mindful of is that on here, it might not necessarily default to being a sum. You might not need sum, you might want count, or you might want average. But if you sometimes it might default to the wrong calculation. So to change that, you go, you click on the actual value, you go value field settings, and then you can change it here. But for this particular calculation, I'm happy with sum. So there we go. Now, CPA. thing to be really mindful of, and this is often where people do slip up on any pivot table skills challenges that we've had before, is calculate how to calculate do a calculated field. Um, some people, so say for example, I already had in here CPA, which is cost divided by conversions. So copy that down. Um, to refresh the data that's in a pivot table. So I now want to feed in that CPA, change data source, and then drag it all the way to column G. Okay. And then you'll see that I've now got CPA. If more data ever goes into your original table, but your columns remain the same, you can quickly just refresh. So if I added something else, I can just hit refresh, and then it will add in the new rows of data. So CPA, common mistake that people make with a pivot table is assuming that a pivot table knows what it's doing. Pivot tables are are good, but they're also a little bit dumb. They're not that intuitive. You still have to be quite manual with developing the information you need in a pivot table. So if you do a sum of a CPA, all that that's doing is summing the data here. It's not taking the calculation into account. Um, so all that is summing £92, £93, £80, but this is a calculation. We don't want to sum it. Another instance of where it would go wrong is if you said, oh, well, I'll just take the average. That's also not the correct calculation. The actual calculation that you want is the total cost for that month divided by the total conversions for that month. So one way of doing that is just going equals cost divided by conversions. Problem with that is if I drag it down, that looks a little bit strange. I'm not sure that that is correct. In order to cheat the calculation and make it correct, you actually are better off using a calculated field. So on pivot table analyze, field items and sets, you can click calculated field, and then we're going to have that as CPA, correct? And I'm going to go equals cost divided by conversions, add. Okay. And therefore, we've got our accurate CPAs. And you'll see that this average is not quite correct. It's an indicator of what your actual average is, but it's not the accurate information. So a calculated field is always the best way to get the absolute correct number. Again, we can format this however we want and customize it to make it a bit more attractive. We can remove this, just drag it out. We don't need that anymore. And we can also get rid of the blanks because when the pivot table was created, it incorporated blank cells here, which is fine, but we can just neaten this up and hide it. We could also give this a name, pivot table. And then we could even add in our conditional formatting, whatever we want to sort of glam it up a bit. And then we did my top tip. So the last thing that I'm going to do is a sum if. This is starting to get a little bit, if you're not familiar with spreadsheets, this is now getting a little bit advanced. SumIf is another way of summing raw data without the need for a pivot table. It's really helpful if you're always going to be adding more data into your base sheet, into the raw data file, because it will always automatically populate it without you having to manually refresh the data or change the data source. Because trust me, having worked with like hundreds of thousands of rows of data, sometimes it has a bit of a mind of its own and it's not always that intuitive. So if you're always going to be doing regular reporting, using if statements and sum ifs is a much more robust way of doing that. So I'm just going to show you quickly how to do that. So let's say I'm building out a report here, and I also want to do this in exactly the same way. I'm just doing it in an alternative, with an alternative formula. So as soon as I put in January, I can just drag down because it knows the months. And I want the same data as I've done before, but I'm just going to build it out. So to use a SUMIF, first of all, we need the range criteria sum range. Okay, so we go equals SUMIF, open bracket. The range is the range that matches this information here. So in this case, we're looking off of our raw data. We want the month column. And then we click comma, criteria. So in this case, the criteria is this cell here, which is the same month that we're looking up from. And then the sum range is whatever we want from here. So in this case, my sum range is going to be my cost. Close brackets. Enter. And then we've got our cost summed, and I can just drag this down, and that's fine. Now, we can build this out quickly. So I don't need to type that formula in again for all of these different columns. What I can do is drag this. However, 0. We know that that's not correct because we've got a million up here. What's happened here is that this particular cell lookup has moved. And also, let's just double check this. VLOOKUP to GG. So column G is actually CPA, whereas we wanted it to be month. So clearly something has gone wrong here. Now VLOOKUP C is impressions. So we do actually want impressions. So I'm happy with this. But what I'm not happy with is this and this. A quick way to sort this is to lock the cells. So there's different ways in which you can lock cells, and you can quickly do this by pressing F4 on your keyboard if you've got a keyboard, or you can do it manually by typing in dollar signs. So if I do that and lock up F, which is the month column, then when I start dragging this around, it won't move. So that's good. With this one, you can lock it in 3 different ways. You can lock it completely, i.e., it never moves. You can lock it to the right, which means that you can move it right and left, but it will lock right and left, but it will move up and down. Or you can lock it to the left, which means that it will lock up and down, but won't move right. It will move right and left, but it won't move up and down. So sometimes it's just a bit of trial and error. So I'm gonna drag this as this works. Okay, so we've still got month is locked. That's good. And just by clicking on the formula bar up here, you can see if it's working, and obviously got a point of reference here. So let's try this again. If I drag this along here, cool, right, now I'm done. This is all working. Pull that down, and then I can type in my CPA formula. So the cost divided by conversions. Boom. Now, the benefit of doing this is that if I add in more and more data, it will automatically update. I don't even need to touch this. I've built a dashboard, it means that I can just keep dumping data into here, and my table is already ready and primed. So if you're ever doing any sort of building dashboards, creating reports, it's always better to do a bit of the upfront work of building out the reporting structure rather than always relying on a pivot table, because it means that you've made your life easier for next time you do your reporting. I'm not going to do goal seek because we've only got 5 minutes left, but it's first of all, I'm going to say ask me anything. But the second thing is, if you did enjoy this, we can delve into goal seek and more advanced stuff for another session. Totally happy to do another one. We can start building out dashboards. We can test out some ifs. So, where there's more variables involved, we can talk about if statements, and I can show you how to build out like a really great dashboard that honestly like blows people's minds. So, or if you're a bit lame like me and you just like building this stuff, we can delve into some slightly more complicated things in another session. Um, but yeah, thank you for listening. Appreciate that spreadsheets are a little bit dry. For anybody that played along on their own spreadsheet, feel free to ask any questions at this point.